UFC fighters who have to win their next fight. Let's start off with Adesanya. He has to win his next fight no matter who it's against. Let's say it's against the opponent who he's been calling out for some time now. He wants a rematch against Sean Strickland. If he gets that rematch, he has to win that fight, for more reasons than just one. First of all, he's on a 3-fight losing streak, to Strickland, Duplessis, and Amavov. Those are some of the top fighters at middleweight, but Adesanya is such a big star that he has to be able to hang with the top guys. Because if he can't do that, then what really is there left for him to do? He's not a gatekeeper, obviously. And if he takes about 2 more losses to guys like RDR and Anthony Hernandez, then he will have one of the greatest middleweight careers end off on a very disappointing note. He doesn't want to go out like that. And another reason why he must win his next fight, especially if it's against Strickland, is because it will affect his legacy. Now you might be thinking, his prime is over, he had his run, even if he goes on a skid, it won't affect his legacy, but it will. People are already starting to dissect his career and come up with reasons for why it just wasn't impressive. Many have chalked up his loss to Strickland as just not him having it that day. He was just off and it was just Strickland's night. If he gets that rematch and he wins, then that will be great because it'll mean he avenged one of his losses just like he did against Pereira. And the people who were saying that first fight was a fluke will become even louder. However, if he loses, then people will come to the conclusion that Strickland is just simply a better fighter than Adesanya. And for somebody who was in conversations with Anderson Silva for greatest middleweight ever, ending his career off on this note where a lot of the younger fans have just seen him lose. They saw him lose to Alex the first time, they saw him knock him out in the rematch, and then just lose a bunch of fights in a row. It will not be a great look for him. Knowing when to get out of this sport is important, and I don't think Adesanya should retire, he should still fight. I'm not saying he's Tony Ferguson at the end of his career. I'm just highlighting how important his next fight is, no matter who it's against, but especially if it's against Strickland. The next fighter is Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall must win his fight against Ciryl Gane. Not only does Tom have to win this fight for himself, but for the sake of the heavyweight division. Gane is 0-2 in title fights, and both of those losses have come to Francis Ngannou and John Jones. Right now, the way the casual fan knows, and I hate even using the word casual, but the way the casual fan knows who Aspinall is, as a guy who Jones doesn't want to fight. That's his reputation right now. Gane is known as a guy who got dismantled by Jones. His stocks are at an all-time low. Even his last fight, which was a win against Volkov, many people view that as a robbery. So like I said, Gane's stocks are at an all-time low. So there's no excuse for Tom to lose that fight. The backlash if he loses will be insane. Jones probably already had his tweets ready to go if Tom loses. Aspinall is viewed as maybe the most talented heavyweight ever, fighting in the worst division in the UFC. He must beat these heavyweights. Losing to Gane will result in him becoming, I want to say, a little bit of a meme. Aspinall wasn't in the wrong to ask for that Jones fight. Not at all. He won the interim belt, and he even defended the interim belt. Of course his next fight had to be for the undisputed title. And he wasn't even necessarily asking to fight Jones. He was just asking to fight for the undisputed title, which Jones happened to be holding at that time. But people don't view it that way. Many people look at it as he was begging Jones to fight. The only time I think Tom appeared desperate for that fight, which I don't even think was a big deal, it was actually good promotion if that fight were to happen, but the only time you could possibly make the claim that he seemed desperate was when he went up to Jones at the autograph signing event or whatever it was. It's where he asked to face off against Jones and Jones denied his request, but that was a long time ago. He realized pretty quickly that maybe this fight wasn't going to be possible, but the fans don't view it that way. They view this whole saga as him begging Jones to fight him. There are people out there hoping that he loses to Gane so they can say that he was just a hype train all along and everybody just wanted to see Jones lose. So for that reason, Tom must defeat the guy that both Ngannou and Jones defeated. Otherwise, the heavyweight division, which is already a mess for certain reasons, will become even more of a mess, as nobody will take the champion of that division seriously. The next fighter that has to win is Justin Gaethje. So I'll be operating under a certain assumption here. That assumption is that his next fight is not for the title. It better not be for the title. His next fight better not be against Ilia Topuria. So let's just operate under that assumption that his next fight is against anybody else. So that could be anybody from Arman Tsarukyan, Paddy Pimblett, or even Dan Hooker maybe. I don't think he will fight Holloway after just having been knocked out brutally by him not too long ago. And we know now that he won't fight Oliveira because Oliveira is fighting Rafael Fiziev. I think beating Arman, Paddy, or even Hooker at this point would all almost 100% get him a title shot. He must beat whichever one of those guys he's matched up against because his career is almost over. A loss in his next fight would put him so far away from the title that he might just retire. Right now, he's in the closest position he's been in to get a title shot and maybe the closest he'll ever be. If he were to lose to Paddy or Hooker, then what would his next fight even be? Would he be offered Mauricio Hufi if he were coming off a win against Benoit Saint-Denis? I just don't see him accepting that fight at that age that he's at. So a loss in his next fight and I think he might just retire and never get a chance to fight for the belt ever again. So the best possible way for him to end his career would be to win his next fight and get a shot at the title, which he would most likely lose that fight and he could retire. It would be a fine way to retire. It would be like if Poirier had retired after he lost to Islam Makhachev. That's not a bad way to go out. I understand that it's not a win and everybody wants to retire on a win, but there is some sort of closure there. The closure is that you got to fight the best guy in your last fight and you just weren't able to win. You weren't able to beat the best guy and now there's nothing left for you to do, so you leave the sport on your own terms. So Gaethje's next fight is a must-win for him to end his career the way he wants to. The last fighter that must win his next fight is Gilbert Burns. Burns is 39 years old. He's also on the verge of retirement. I might have said that he should have retired already, but a situation has arose that I think could favor him, and one that he also thinks could favor him. Daniel Rodriguez is now ranked. Kevin Holland lost to him, so D-Rod is ranked. And I saw Burns call him out. I think him and maybe some other welterweights as well may have seen that he's ranked and just started salivating. I'm sure Burns makes some pretty good money, and if he sees a winnable fight, especially one that's in the rankings, I think this is the fight for him. Now, if he gets this fight, which I don't see why he wouldn't, unless the UFC offers both Gilbert and D-Rod unranked guys who they want to kind of make a name off of them, then I think this is a winnable fight for Gilbert. But like I said, Gilbert must win this fight to stay relevant, because if he loses to D-Rod, then forget Gilbert being able to hang with the top guys of his division. He can't even hang with the guys who just barely made the rankings or maybe shouldn't even be there. There's fighters who lose at an older age, but they feel different. It feels as if they can still compete, and I don't think people are calling for them to retire. I think Wonder Boy is one of those guys. His losses don't feel brutal. It feels like he can hang with some of the better guys even if he ends up losing. He was doing pretty well against Buckley until he obviously got knocked out. His performance against Kevin Holland was much better than somebody like D-Rod's, and it looked like he should have beaten Gabriel Bonfirm in his last fight as well. Gilbert's losses just feel different. He's no longer the same fighter. It looked like he just shelled up against Michael Morales in his last fight. Gone are the days when he had performances like the one against Hamza. I already think Gilbert doesn't have it anymore, but losing to a guy like D-Rod would just make it as obvious as it gets. A loss in his next fight could be the last fight of his career. These are the fighters that I think are in a must-win situation in their next fights. Let me know who I missed. Who would you add to this list? Until next time, peace.